Hello and welcome to this week's How to Paint. Today we're looking at Sabine Wren for Star Wars Legion. This is one that's been on my back catalogue for a while, and I also recently painted up this Ahsoka and I thought it would make a good companion piece. And because this is an early Legion release, it is an older style of plastic, it's not on a sprue, so I'm just going to be using super glue to assemble Sabine today. And that's because the plastic glue that I normally use won't have an effect on this soft plastic. I'm starting off with my traditional black prime all over, and then I'm switching to a white, and normally I hit the model from 45 degrees, but I'm actually going to be just getting most of the model covered in white to help boost the vibrant colours later. The first of the paints today is XV88, and I'm going to be using this on Sabine's trousers. I'm just going for basic coverage, and the pattern is actually two-tone, so for the other section I'm using Zandri dust. This whole model is going to need a lot of accuracy, so I'm practicing that with these base tones to get a feel for the contours of the miniature. Next up we're using coal black, and I'm using this for her undersuit under the armor. There are patches of grey, so I'm leaving those blank. This is just to help me kind of get used to the idea of getting more and more detailed, so I'm trying to be as steady and as deliberate as possible. Normally I would just kind of cover the model with a base coat, but I'm getting the practice in now for when we do the markings and stuff later on. I'm also using the same black for the dark saber. And then also the T-shape in the visor. If there's any mistakes at this stage, it's totally fine, we're still in the base coating step, but I'm just trying to practice being a little bit more accurate. Now we're using neutral grey, and I'm just filling in those gaps from the bodysuit. You can also see that a good general rule of thumb is to work from the inside out, so I'm doing those underlying details first and then building up to the higher points like the armor later on. I'm using that same neutral grey for the boots as well. And then I'm switching over to a petroleum grey. This is a dark grey with kind of a purple tone to it. I'm using this for the straps and other details on the suit. In hindsight, this could have just been a dark grey or a black. After the wash was applied, you couldn't really tell. But for now, I'm just using this as just to break up the normal colors. I'm just making sure I get all of these small incidental details before we move on to the more obvious sections like the armor. She is wearing fingerless gloves, but for the time being, I'm just doing the whole thing in petroleum grey. And here I'm using a SpeedPaint. This is dark wood. You could totally use like a Mournfang brown normal paint, but I just wanted to save a little bit of time here and just use a quick SpeedPaint. So I'm applying this to the holster and the belt, again with a little bit of accuracy where I can, and then tidy up with that original base color if I overpaint anywhere. And then she also has those classic Star Wars bandolier type things around her legs, so I'm just using the same color for those. For most of the armor sections, I'm going to be using Alien Purple. This is a older Army Painter color, so it didn't really work very well. It's kind of patchy, and it kind of dried glossy as well. I think it's just the age of the paint. I know that Army Painter has since done the Fanatic range, and I haven't had a chance to use those yet, so if you can, try to get this color in the newer mix. The tone is perfect though, so I am going to be using this for most of the armor sections, but I'm just going to kind of muscle my way through and fight to get the right color here. You can see how thin it is applying, but I think once the wash is on there and some highlight colors, it won't be as bad. I just need to tone the miniature purple to begin with. And now I'm using Averland Sunset for the pauldron. This is just a nice simple application here, and I'm doing 2 coats if it needs it. And then I'm using Mephiston red for any of the overall red sections of the armor. What I'm doing as well is I'm also kind of looking at the reference material and kind of rounding up the colors. So because there's a lot of paint splats and stuff all over the armor, I'm just kind of generalizing a lot of these sections into a single color, and then I'll go in with my highlights. This next color is a bold titanium white. On the other pauldron she has like a checkerboard pattern, so I'm just basing this in a white in preparation for that. And then I mixed up a kind of purpley grey with some of the neutral grey and the alien purple. And I'm just using this for a quick base tone around the edge of the helmet. I'm using a medium kind of grey for the antenna and also the pistol. At this stage I'm just making sure that everything has got at least a base coat on it. There is some patchy areas you can kind of see between the armor, but the wash should catch all of that. And for the wash itself, I'm using Nuln oil and Lahmian medium. So the Lahmian medium will actually kind of dilute the wash just a bit. So this is a 50-50 ratio. And I just want a nice subtle wash all over. I don't want to like darken the intensity of the purples and yellows and things. So this is just to get into those gaps and cover up any of those areas that didn't get a base coat. And now we're moving on to highlighting. So now that the wash is dry, I'm switching over to the original base tones that I used, and I'm just starting to add some sections of highlight. To increase the highlights, I'm mixing in Mojave white. So this is kind of an ivory color, and if I use straight white, it's going to desaturate those colors. So by using an ivory, it has a little bit of yellow in it, and that helps build up those tan colors and those browns, but still keep their vibrancy. So my general rule of thumb is the first highlight is the original base color, and then the next one is the same color but with a little bit of that Mojave white mixed in. And this I find helps keep the vibrancy of the color without desaturating it with a white. For these sections of gray, I'm just building up a simple grayscale. I'm not mixing in anything special, this is just a white color mixed in. And again, just doing 2 levels of highlight here. The next color I'm using is Mournfang brown, and this is just going to be my quick highlight for some of the leather. This is a nice orangey brown, and you can see that I'm using the edge of the brush just to catch the sharp corners of the sculpt. I'm just working my way around the model and finding areas that I want to highlight. So for example, using that same grayscale that I've mixed up, I'm now just adding some quick highlights to the back of the boots. I'm basically just taking my time and finding smaller areas that need 1 or 2 highlights before building up to the markings. I decided to add just a little bit of Genestealer purple onto the existing alien purple. 1, because it was kind of shiny and weird, and 2, because I just wanted to boost some of that color before adding all the paints on top. So I'm just going in and adding a very, very quick edge highlight to some of these areas. A lot of this will be covered up with some of the markings in a minute, so I just wanted to make sure that this just had a solid coat underneath. And now for the fun part, we're on to the markings. So I'm using Evil Sunz Scarlet. This is a nice vibrant red, and I'm just blotching on some paint splats. I tried using a sponge, but it was just a little bit too clumsy for this kind of delicate work. I'm also using that Averland Sunset Yellow, and I'm starting to add in some of these stripes and things. Using a lot of reference in the background, but just making sure, taking my time, and then cleaning up with those original colors if I overspill. So for the chest armor, again, just kind of splotching on some rough ideas, and then going in and adding a kind of an off-white here as some of the more detailed markings. I must have been praying to the miniature gods when I was painting these, because I was quite happy with some of these like first try. There was a couple that I had to like cover up and do again, but overall you're just kind of gesturing towards the idea. You don't have to get like dead on one-to-one, because remember, these models are going to be seen from roughly 2 feet away most of the time. I'm using AK's Green Sky for some of the smaller details on the pauldron. And so I'm just going in with a fairly simple circle. And then I'm switching out to that Genestealer purple and just very, very carefully sketching in that rough shape. She has an owl on the pauldron itself, and so I'm simplifying that design right the way down to basically a curly line and then a teardrop shape. The other pauldron has kind of a racing checkerboard kind of pattern, and I tried to math it out, but my brain wasn't working at this point, so I just ended up doing kind of a grid and then going back in with a black and a white and just tidying up, making it look much more like a checkerboard. I then used some Averland Sunset and did a rough circle over the top. So you can kind of see you don't have to mark in everything underneath, because a lot of this is going to be layered on top. And then that Evil Sun Scarlet for that 5 that's on the design. Once you sketch in these sections, you can then tidy them up with the original yellow. I'm building up in that red scale still, so now we're using Wild Rider Red, which is a very, very vibrant, basically orange at this point. And I'm using this for the helmet marking. So this is kind of, she's sort of spray painted this on, so it's very, very blotchy. And then for the other details, I'm using Screamer Pink. Again, like the other markings, I'm just kind of gesturing to the idea. I'm not going for 100% accuracy. So you can kind of see I'm just really generalizing a lot of these intricate patterns to a simple line. I also mixed up almost like a white pink with some of the Screamer Pink and just the Bold Titanium White. And I'm just using this to cover the rest of the helmet. I'm constantly going back and forth between the research and the model, and just making sure that I'm getting most of these markings. So on the backpack, there's like a wing design. Again, there's not a lot of real estate here, so just some quick brush marks. And then some other colors just to kind of bring that closer to the reference. Luckily, a lot of these are already on the palette. Here I'm using some pink flesh, and I'm just getting the fingers. This is just a basic tone, and I'd probably use this color if I went for the alternative head as well. And then I mixed in a little bit of that Mojave white, just a very small highlight. And then just a fairly bright grey for the edges of the bandoliers around her shins. I realized that when she has the Darksaber, she has different gauntlets. So I went back and repainted these into that neutral grey, and then she kind of has some Clan Wren markings. These are way too intricate for this scale. So I just simplified those right the way down to a yellow, and then just added some curved lines and some dashes. The Darksaber is pretty simple. This is just a pure white. I've highlighted the edge, and then I'm just going in and adding that kind of crackle effect, but I'm making sure to keep it closest to the sharp edge of the Darksaber. And for the base, I'm going to be mimicking Ahsoka's base from the previous episode. So this is just a texture paint from Vallejo. And then once that's dried, I then went in with a quick dry brush, and I also used some of that Vietnam Earth pigment. This is kind of messy, so I'm making sure to keep it away from the main model, and then finally finishing out Sabine with a black rim around the base. Once all that was dry, I then added some tufts of grass just to make it feel much more like Ahsoka's base. And here she is. This was a fun one. Like, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of paints and things that she's kind of splattered her boots and her gloves with. And this was kind of an exercise in accuracy on such a small scale. But it was really fun, and I'm really happy with the results. Some of those early Legion models, the sculpts can be a little rough, but this one I think has stood the test of time. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below if you like it. Do you want to see me tackle the Shatterpoint Sabine as well? As always, if you've enjoyed this tutorial, feel free to drop a like, that does help the video, and also subscribe if you want to see more tutorials in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.